without further ado, let's get into this, people. So, just as a warning, I'm still fighting that dreaded soul. So, if I have to take a lot of drinks and clear the throat a little bit, I apologize. It just is what it is, people. Let's get this thing moving. So, who is to blame for the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation? You know, when Ben retired, there was no plan. There just flat out was no plan. There was no backup. It was just, okay, what are we going to do? So even before that, and we'll discuss that a little bit, before he retired, there was no plan. It's almost like the Steelers thought Ben was going to play forever and allowed him to play forever. So let's dive in to see who's at fault. First up, is it the front office? And when I mean the front office, general manager, head coach, you know, is it their fault? Because the one thing that we know is Mike Tomlin has not been able to develop, let's just say, a backup quarterback. Because look, Ben came into the league, Mike Tomlin got him in his third year. People say that Tomlin didn't develop him, he was already developed. That's not true. That isn't true. Now, if you want to give the credit for his development to other people, fine. The Bruce Arians of the world, the Todd Haley's of the world. If you want to say that they are responsible, okay, I'll give you that, because that's a lot of truth to that. But Mike Tomlin was still the head coach the majority of Ben's years, and Ben was not a fully finished product when Mike Tomlin became the head coach. If you can't be honest about that, you should stay out of that conversation, because that's simply just not true. He wasn't a finished product, and I think we all know that. Okay. But we also know that Mike Tomlin hadn't been able to develop a backup quarterback worth a damn either. And let's just go over the names. First off, Omar Jacobs. Who the hell is Omar Jacobs? That would be the first thing. It's like, he got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, but who the hell is that? Landry Jones. I think we remember Landry Jones. Got drafted again by the Steelers, but didn't amount to much. Started a few games when Ben got hurt. Yeah, it did not work out. Did not work out. Joshua Dobbs. Now, Dobbs is still kicking around the NFL. And Dobbs, to me, is still a good backup quarterback if given an opportunity. Like I said, he's still kicking it around in the NFL, but he got better, it seemed, once he left the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's that. Now you have your man Mason Rudolph. Is Mason Rudolph developed? Is he even going to get a shot to ever be a starting quarterback? That's number one. I know we say, well, it's Pittsburgh and we didn't develop him. Well, he had his opportunity in Tennessee and couldn't beat out Will Levis, which maybe he wasn't given a real shot there. But when Levis got hurt, Mason Rudolph went in, wasn't great, but we'll see what happens, because I think Mason Rudolph is serviceable. He's a serviceable quarterback, maybe a step below Joshua Dobbs, maybe a step above Joshua Dobbs, depending on the situation. Then you got Chris Oladuncan, got drafted the same year in 2022. I mean, seventh round pick. What were we doing? I mean, and again, just no development. 95% of Pittsburgh Steelers fans don't even know who the hell that is. And then lo and behold, baby Hans Pickett. And a lot of people talk about Kenny Pickett. Well, the Steelers did him wrong. You heard Terry Bradshaw. The Steelers failed him. Okay, well, did the Eagles fail him too? I mean, he was with the Eagles. Why wouldn't he be the backup there? And don't say, well, they had an opportunity. Hey, he was the backup quarterback. And when he got his opportunity, when Jalen Hurts got hurt last year, Baby Hands played like Baby Hands does. First of all, it was mediocre play with an outstanding roster, and then he got hurt, which is exactly what he did in Pittsburgh. He stayed hurt. So, Mike Tomlin hasn't been able, and his staff haven't been able to develop either a starter or a backup. Other than, I'm going to give him credit for Ben. I'm going to do that. People are going to get in the comments and argue all day long. Again, Ben Roethlisberger was not a finished product when Mike Tomlin became the head coach. He wasn't. He just wasn't. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how much you despise Mike Tomlin, he was not a finished product. And you can't just say it was only the assistants. You can't do that, people. We can't do that. Having said that, who else has Mike Tomlin developed? I would say nobody. And he's had a long time to be able to do that. So that's on him. But the mess that we're in as far as the quarterback, I mean, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, the front office, Kevin Colbert. I know he gets left off because, he is not there anymore. He retired. But Kevin Colbert has a whole lot to do with it. So the front office has their problems. Now you move on. Is it Art Rooney? Now, to me, I think Art Rooney II is too involved in football operations. Now, I know he stays behind the scenes a little bit, but I don't think he's a real football guy. I think he was born into it, but I don't think that he's a real football guy. And I think he is more involved than what he or the Steelers actually let on. I believe that he's in there. I believe he's making certain decisions. I believe he's a part of all of this. And I just don't think he's a football guy. And that's part of it, is that he is too involved in what goes on. And would I mean, my thing is, he didn't make the decision on Big Ben. We're going to get to Big Ben here in a minute, but he didn't make the decision, or he let the decision fester and just keep going and going and going. If you remember, his father had to make a choice, and it was a tough choice. Everybody remembers Troy Polamalu. Troy didn't want to retire. Troy wanted to keep playing. He wanted to play another year. But Dan Rooney said to him, look, you can either retire a Steeler or we're going to cut you. This ride is over. And Troy contemplated him going somewhere else, and then he retired. It's tough decisions, man. I get it. But it's also a tough business. And it is a business, and you can't allow maybe personal feelings or whatever get in the way in what's doing right for the franchise. And Ben played too long. They allowed him to be there too long. And that was part of it. Art Rooney should have stepped in and said no. And now we're going to move on to Big Ben, because that leads us right into this. Is it Big Ben's fault? Big Ben. Now, this is the one that I push back the most on, because all Big Ben was saying was, I want to keep playing football. I'm going to keep playing until I literally, you tell me no more, or I feel like I can't. And Ben stayed. Now, people say, well, he should have quit. Now, how are you going to tell somebody what they should and shouldn't do? That's number one. Number two, somebody was still willing to pay him a lot of money to continue to play football. Now, whether I can do it or not is a different situation. But if somebody's going to pay me millions of dollars to do something, why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I give it myself a chance? And that's what he did. Now, were the last few years very good? No. Should he probably have quit? It's hard to say whether he should have quit or not. But the last few years weren't great. He hurt his arm and hurt his elbow. That was a huge setback. That's late in his career. He never got the velocity back. But I don't think that any of this is Ben's fault. Some people want to blame him. He has no blame. And the reason that I say that is because, again, if I play a sport and I want to continue playing and somebody's going to continue to pay me, then why wouldn't I continue to do it if that's what I wanted to do? Because there'll become a time where I don't want to do it anymore. And there was a time, but the Steelers let Ben play it out. They should have moved on, and they didn't. They did it to Troy. They should have done the same thing to Ben and said, okay, what was that, the 2020 season, the COVID season? We lost in the playoffs. Damn it, Ben, we love you, but we got to move on. They did not do that. And because they didn't do that, the team suffered. And they just basically hung on too long. He hung on too long. The Steelers let him hang on too long. But that's the conundrum. That's where we're at. But I don't blame Ben. I think people out there that blame that, for instance, if you had a job, whatever job that you have, and whether you're good at it or not, at the end of it, down near towards the end of your career, if they're still willing to pay you to do it and you still want to do it, Wouldn't you go ahead and let them continue to pay you? Yes, you would. Now, if you didn't want to do it, that's a different conversation for a different day. That's a different situation. But if you still wanted to work at your job and wanted to prove that you could do it and your company was willing to pay you, you would absolutely go to it. That's what Ben did. It's not his fault, people. Got to let that one go. My man Big G always wants to blame Ben in this. He's wrong. You can't blame Big Ben. All he was doing was playing football, and the Steelers allowed him to play football, and they paid him to do it. If they didn't want him to play, they could have just said, no, you're done. They didn't do that. Let's move on to the poll question, people. This will be interesting. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Who do you believe is primarily responsible for the Steelers' current quarterback dilemma? Is it A, Mike Tomlin, B, Omar Khan? I'm not sure how he could be part of it, but he is. C, Kevin Colbert, D, Ben Roethlisberger, or E, Art Rooney? I like it. I like those questions, people. Make sure when you answer A, B, C, or D, put a number, the number 1 in front of it so we know exactly what poll question that you guys are answering. Let's move on.